Welcome to House TRW. We're going to go ahead and get started. We can go ahead and call roll.
Representative Campbell.
Here.
Representative Conley.
Here.
Representative Harshman.
Here.
Representative Jarvis.
Here.
Representative Provenza.
Here.
Representative Storer.
Excused.
Representative Thayer. Representative Wharf.
Here.
Chairman Byron.
Here, thank you. All right, everyone. 1:15, we're due back upstairs at 3. We'll probably be a little bit after that, but committee and folks in the room, please go ahead and silence your phones. Be nice or leave, be kind, be civil, and please work through the chair. We are going to start today on Co-Chair Harshman's House Bill 106.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee. Mr. Chairman, appreciate you scheduling the hearing on this bill. The bill is an idea really I've had for a long time. I think as a kid, and all of us think of those moments, visiting our national monuments, those things are really important. But just a little history on this. This idea really, it was 100 years ago where the South Dakota legislature passed a bill giving their state historian, I think it was a man named Robinson, last name Robinson. He'd been advocating for a couple of years about this idea to celebrate America's 150th anniversary and wanted to do it. You know, the Black Hills now was starting to really, you know, it was an incredible area to take off and to develop tourism there. And so the South Dakota legislature passed a bill telling the state historian he could go out and kind of find a spot and bring back some ideas. Looked at several spots in the Black Hills, and I think his idea, from what I've read, was originally more of Western kind of expansion, Lewis and Clark, Sacagawea, and long story short, South Dakota senator passes a bill in Congress. A sculptor, Borglum, is hired, changes more to presidents. The 4 presidents that are there are selected. I think started in 1927 and went to about, finally finished about 1939. So that's kind of but the whole idea was about to promote tourism and to celebrate the history of our great country. So that tourism piece in the Black Hills now, it's about 2.5 million visitors a year come to Mount Rushmore, about $500 million in economic impact. It's really incredible. And so, you know, you think about Wyoming's landscape, there are so many places, but I think, I think we want to think differently about this. Maybe it's not a massive sculpture on a mountain. Maybe it's a statue garden. Maybe it's something, somebody has a different idea, but I think it would be neat just to get us together, a group of people, and I'll explain to people in the bill, just to talk about how we could do this, or is there other ideas? I've had many artists contact me, sculptors. One said, why don't we do 250 12-foot sculptures, one for each year of our country? And I thought it was an interesting idea. And then the bill will talk about trying to locate it on school trust land so we can get a funding source. I think also perhaps on the reservation. I think those things are how you change economies. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, Section 1 of the bill, members on page 1, creates this task force. And the task force, it talks about who are members of it. It's the current governor, speaker, and president of the Senate, and then any former governors, speakers, or presidents who want to join it. Up to the committee. If you've got another idea, I'd love to hear it. But I was just trying to think of some folks. I look at those governor pictures on the wall. They've been here a while, been a part of the state for decades, and I thought it'd be the same with some of the former presidents and speakers as well. So that part. The task force, you know, on line 7 on page 2, develop preliminary specifications, plans, features. Maybe that's a little too much. Maybe it's getting together to discuss ideas, you know, is some notes that I've written. But in recognition of the upcoming 250th year anniversary of signing the Declaration of Independence. So on line 11 talks about the monument to America, the same size and scope as Mount Rushmore National Monument. Maybe that's not it. Maybe that part needs to leave the bill. I don't know. I'm just, but I think I wore my think big tie for a reason today. And I want us to kind of think big about this and feature important historical American figures. You know, we're the first government in the world to grant women's suffrage. Maybe it's Nellie Taylor Ross on here, or Susan B. Anthony, or other. I mean, there's a lot of history we could talk about and think about, and how Wyoming it's been incredible history. So, including Native American leaders. And so and then I put in here, and I think it's important on line 16, these historical figures from the 18th, 19th, and 20th century. And I was, as a history major in college, as a person who loves and values and reads about our history, I just think the current leaders in this century need a little more time, a little more history behind them. And I think, so I think that's important. And then Mr. Chairman, on line 19, it says determine a location. Maybe that could be softened to identify possible locations for the monument, and the objective of locating on school trust lands. And I think our geologists and our people in our state government can pinpoint some really incredible areas. I've had a lot of friends across the state who said this would be a great place, or this would be a great place to promote this. And okay, and then Mr. Chairman and members, on page 3, Romanet 3, make recommendations for the development, location, administrative structure. Again, maybe that's too specific. Committee might want to soften that a little bit. And then talks about compensation for the members. It's staffed by the Department of State Parks. Tourism and the state geologists are asked to help out on that, and I'm sure would. And then on page 4 is the appropriation for basically 2 years of meetings for non-legislative members, and then appropriation for if there's current legislative members that are on the task force. So that's the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Vice Chair Harshman. Appreciate that walkthrough. I'm going to tee up for a quick question while my colleagues read the bill. Can you explain to us what generally these task forces have been used for in the past? I know in my previous session, we had a couple of them that passed through to study topics like this, and some on the property tax side of things, some on state shooting complexes. But in your time in the body, can you just explain how they get used and why?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, great question. I think there's always this debate in the legislature, should we have a standing committee or a task force? And I thought for something like this, I thought to bring in some folks who've had a lot of history in our state. And that's why all the former governors, particularly, I thought, who have spent a lifetime of service and now are out of that role. But so task forces look primarily at a specific topic. I've been on the Merit Scholarship Task Force when we designed the Hathaway. We did the Wyoming's Tomorrow Task Force. We designed the Wyoming's Tomorrow, this workforce development scholarship that is kicked off this year. Education Accountability Task Force, served on that. That was a mind-numbing experience. There's been others, I'm sure, that I can't remember, but it's a pretty common thing. We had the state shooting complex. And I guess the other part of this, Mr. Chairman, we've appropriated $13 million at this point, state shooting complex. I've supported every vote along the way. And it's to promote tourism and promote visitors and world-class. And it's really along the same veins. And, if you Google and do what did it cost for Mount Rushmore? A little over $1 million back then, and extrapolate that, it's about 19 million. Now, who knows? I mean, but it's interesting. It's a thing to talk about and think about. But I think it'd be all part of the learning experience.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. And for my committee, just remember at this point, we're here to, ask questions. The dialogue back and forth can happen if we decide to move the bill. So, committee, do we have any more questions of Vice Chair Harshman, Representative Campbell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for bringing the idea. I do love the idea. Question though, in terms of using land, our school trust lands, and if this has been a conversation with them and how they feel about that. Because I would hate to run into challenges moving this forward and then state land says, nah, this is not an option.
Vice Chair Hirschman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The school trust lands, as you know, were set aside at statehood, 2 sections per township, and it's just a part of the fabric of our state lands, but the school trust lands in particular are the largest part of our trust lands. And the whole idea is to, whether it's mining or putting a truck stop on them, which is one of our largest generators of revenue right now on I-80, or maybe housing developments, or in some cases, they've been sold as recently in Teton County for $100 million. But so the idea is to generate permanent revenue for the school children. And we always have had and we always will have public schools in Wyoming. And so I think the idea fits in nicely with their charge is to maximize the income for the school children. So for the trust. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Harshman. Representative Connolly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the intent would be that when this got located, then there would be fees charged for people to come and see it. And those fees then would go to help support the schools? Or would,
Representative Harshman.
Mr. Chairman, I think much of that could be worked out. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns, but if you go to Mount Rushmore today, there's fees to walk in. And so that's kind of the idea is you develop, you know, if you were to develop this on a state school section, there would be leases, fees, it'd be, I mean, it could be, I think, a pretty amazing kind of draw for people if it turns out that we want to move in that direction. But I think all that can be figured out in the end, yeah, as we get close.
Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One more question for you. I appreciate the inclusion of, having the tribal liaison and contributing to. Do you have an idea, though, in terms of the size of this task force? Or is it anybody who would be willing or interested? My concern is if there's not a limit to the size of this task force and we end up having 40 people on the task force, then the appropriated funds likely would not cover that. So do you have a ballpark number?
Representative Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that question. I haven't counted exactly, but when I was speaker, we had a speaker and president's reunion here at the Capitol. Unfortunately, a few have passed since then. My first speaker, Parody, has passed away last spring, but I think at the max would be around 20, at the max. And I don't think it would probably be that large, but thank you.
Committee, any other questions of the bringer? Hearing none, thank you, Vice Chair Harshman. He does have another bill to get to in another committee, so at this point, I'm gonna free him up and ask any agency to come up. Other electeds that want to testify on Monument to America. I see a few other electeds in the room. None are jumping up to the mic, but please, any agencies in the room that want to talk about this, please come on up, introduce yourself. So excited to see you in House TRW. We'll see a lot more of you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Diane Schober. I'm the Executive Director at the Wyoming Office of Tourism. When Representative Harshman asked me about this project last summer and just wanted to get some input from the tourism perspective and what it would mean, I shared with him our thoughts around product development. And this really would be a product for the visitor economy. And any time that we can evaluate projects and see what their value could be, and if it proves to have value to go forward, a visitor experience extends the length of stay, and that's how you contribute to and grow the economic value of each and every trip. And so we rely in our economy in Wyoming, about 80% of non-residents who are traveling to Wyoming as a vacation and a destination. And so I would just offer that I think that anytime there's a product opportunity, it does deserve the evaluation to see, you know, what it could present. And obviously, we would leave that decision to all of you, but the Office of Tourism, if it should go forward, would be a proactive partner in working on that task force. And I'd stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Director Schober. Any questions from the committee? Representative Storr, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Schober, for being here. You know, the discussion that we had last evening about the shooting complex did make me wonder about the question of an actual marketing analysis. At least in the materials that were shared with the legislators, I didn't see any particular analysis about like how many people would use, what it would generate, that kind of thing. So would that be part of what your organization could provide or contract out for, something like that?
Director?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Storr, we certainly could provide guidance to that. We had a member of my team who sat on the Shooting Sports Complex Task Force. There are a lot of resources for economic impact analysis, for marketing forecasts. I do think that those are important components that should not be overlooked, because many times we just assume that it will happen, and it's an integral part of growing visitation is taking that strategic approach to actually driving the visitor economy. So we certainly would work. If we couldn't do it, we don't have the capacity to do it within our own agency, but we certainly have resources where we could make that recommendation to help provide those, that bit of information.
Thank you, Director Schober. Committee, any other questions? Representative Connolly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Would this, if you were to participate in this, would there be, I was looking on the back side of this sheet, would there be any like fiscal impact to your board to help with this project?
Mr. Chairman.
Director Schober?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Connolly, we absorb any of those expenses as we have with other task force. As long as it's within state, it's part of our budget. And so there would not be from that particular component a fiscal impact. There could be others as we would learn more about it if you would be to go forward. But the serving on the task force, there wouldn't be a fiscal impact at this point in time.
Thank you, Director. Committee, any other questions? Great to see you, Director. We'll see more of you soon, I'm sure. Let's go ahead and open it up. Oh, Director, real quick, we have one a little late to the game.
No, I was trying to, Mr. Chairman, I was trying to think how to ask it, but I guess the question I have is, we kind of had kind of a loosey-goosey broad concept versus like a centralized, and I guess I would ask you, as far as the Director of Tourism, which do you think would be more attractive to the state? Would be to have like one centralized location, kind of like they do in the other state, or to have multiple things scattered around the state to maybe encourage tourism throughout? Which would you think would be most beneficial?
Director?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Worf, I think it would be premature to make that decision today without having some additional information and studies and really understanding where there's opportunity for a location and what other capacity and support services might be available. So I would just hold back on making a definitive comment on that part, but would be happy to be a part of a process to evaluate it.
Thank you for that good question, Representative Worf. Thank you, Director. Any other questions pop up? All right, we're gonna go, any other agency in the room want to comment on? Welcome, introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. My name is Ben Bump. I'm the Assistant Director of State Lands, filling in for the director here. He's in another committee at the moment. Didn't really have any specific comments, but this bill would potentially affect state lands with the locating. and some revenue generation for the school funds, which would be great. And we would stand ready to assist the task force in any way. So really just here to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you for those comments. Committee, any questions of the department? Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Answers, question from earlier. Anyone else in the room to any other agency to comment on House Bill 106? Any members of the public in the room to comment on House Bill 106? Please join us up front, unmute the mic, introduce yourself. Welcome to House TRW. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Joseph Martinez. I'm from Fremont County. And I would like to speak against this bill for just a few reasons, not because I'm unpatriotic, because I think it is a great patriotic project, and I do appreciate it. I have some problems with the bill, though, and with the construction of the project. I think the bill is a little bit too vague to really define what we're going to do here. I mean, we bring this bill forward, the task force starts mulling over different ideas. How long will this take for the task force to complete this project? I'm not really sure, and I don't really think the bill does a very good job outlining how long and how much money this is going to cost. I think it is a really good idea for maybe someone in the private sector to take up, and maybe for us not to spend more of our government funds on projects like this, and we really don't know what the economic impact, what the economic effect could be on our state or on our tourism. And then really, again, on the cost, Mount Rushmore to build was just shy of $1 billion. A lot of it was funded through federal grants, and there was some private sector contributions. But the majority of it was from the federal government. And if this is going to be a project from the state, I think maybe probably the state would have to pick up a large portion of the bill if we're going to approach it through this manner. Even if this bill does pass, I'm concerned the task force might not accomplish anything. We just had another regulatory reduction task force, and I didn't really see a whole lot of regulatory reduction come out of it. So we can spend, I think it was $40,000 a year or total to not do anything, and that's what really concerns me about the bill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez, for that, those comments. Committee, any questions? Mr. Martinez? Questions? Not seeing any. Thank you for joining us today. Anyone else in the room that would like to speak on this? And we do not have anyone online confirming? Nope. Okay. Well, seeing no one else, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Committee, what is your pleasure? It's been moved by Representative Harshman, seconded by Representative Campbell. Let's go ahead and work this bill while we still have the good bringer of the bill in the room. Page 1. Page 2, starting at the top.
Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chair Harshman.
Turn on my mic. Mr. Chairman, I think on line 7, I think where it says on develops preliminary specifications, plans, and features, I think you could kind of broaden that a little bit or soften it. Here's my thought, would be more like to delete all of line 7, and then on 8 would delete and features. So just, and simply insert, discuss ideas for the Monument to America. So that's how that would read. I would propose to do that and just kind of broaden that a little bit. And like I said, I've had a lot of feedback from different artists around, and I think even, so I think it's about getting together and discussing ideas.
Okay. Tanner, do you have that? It's page 7, first, the entire line, Representative Campbell.
What do you guys?
I'll second it. And then page 8 and features and insert discuss ideas. Clear as mud? Perfect. Committee, any other discussions on Representative Harshman's amendment?
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Provenza.
Representative Harshman, can you read the sentence to me for my small pea brain?
So, Mr. Chairman, to read, on line 7 would delete all of line 7. And then on line 8, delete the first 2 words, "and features." And after that's deleted, insert 2 words, "discuss ideas for the Monument to America," is how that would read.
Thank you for that clarifier, Representative Harshman. Yes, we're on discussion now. Representative Provenza, did that clear it up?
Yep, my pea brain is just fine.
Representative Campbell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as a challenge to that amendment, I've noted that the end date, right, is June 30th, 2027. So the expectation, as I read this, is that by the end of 2027, we have a product, right? That we can say, here's what we've discovered, here's ideas we have, and here's how we're gonna move this forward. So to eliminate the preliminary specifications, plans, and features, then my question is, then why are we spending $40,000 in 2 years to just talk about ideas? We could do that over coffee. So I would say needs to be more purpose in this task force and clear objectives that would be achieved at the end of that 2-year period.
Thank you, Representative Campbell. Representative Jarvis?
Thank you, Chairman. Just to build on that, I would say, I would because I appreciate what was said on the being fiscally conservative as well, discuss ideas and is it possible to have proposals? Like just those raw estimates of this is what we were thinking and this is what it might cost?
Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chair Harshman?
I'm not sure if I had a second. If I did, but.
I did.
Did you? And I just think, I think I'll withdraw that and let committee work this area a little bit. I think I'm already hearing better ideas. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll withdraw, if that's okay.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you for that question. Representative Storr, my good colleague.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I just asked the bringer of the bill, and I'm sorry I was late to committee, but I would like to delete the part that shall be similar in size and scope to the Mount Rushmore National Monument. And on lines 11 and 12, page 2, I guess my thinking is like, this could be a lot of things. And I'm not sure we want to just box ourselves into that. I think something featuring historical figures makes sense and including Native American leaders. I'm just not sure it is a carved rock with portraits.
Thank you, Representative Storr. I also have some ink on my page right in that same area. Vice Chair Harshman may have an amendment for us.
You know, Mr. Chairman and Representative Storr, actually, I agree 100% with you. And I think, you know, the feedback I've had from artists and stuff, not sure you're here, but said, why wouldn't we have like a 250 12-foot tall statues, one for each year? So I agree totally. And I think what I had on mine was right on line 11 after Monument to America, then delete the rest of the line 12 through Mount Rushmore National Monument. So it'd read Monument to America and shall feature historical American figures. I think we're all thinking that. But anyway, if somebody wanted to make that, but I think we all had that kind of scratched on there.
Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would important historical American figures also include maybe like giant grizzly bear statues or other fun features of our wildlife?
Not sure that's an amendment, but I appreciate the question. Reminds me of Gentle Ben. So I would propose an amendment similar to that comment where on line 11, after America, delete the remainder and delete line 12 all the way up to and. So it would read for LSO, starting on line 10, the Monument to America shall feature important historical American figures as recommended by the task force, including Native American leaders. That would be my proposed amendment. Seconded by Representative Provenza. Any discussion? Question being called. All those in favor, question, Representative Thayer.
I had another on line number 19, I think we should identify locations, or is that getting too detailed? Because if we box this in for a location and then,
I got that coming. So a question being called on that amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. That amendment passes. Tanner, if you're keeping up with this, I will get you a copy here. Representative Campbell.
So I would propose an amendment on page 1. So page 2, line 3, where it ends, Senate who agrees to participate in the task force period, inserting the sentence, the task force will be limited in size to 20 members. And then on page 2, same page, line 19, striking determine and inserting identify possible locations, making location plural. So those 2 changes.
Appreciate that. I will have a quick comment from Representative Jarvis earlier. I would ask if you could identify a list of possible locations. I think we need something to bring back to folks, a tangible thing. So that was my amendment. If you'll take that as a friendly, I'd be happy to second it.
Absolutely.
Okay, committee, are we aware of that? Starting up on page 3 and then page 19, Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would say the task force will be limited to no more than 20 members. We might not need 20 people. Decision-making with that many people becomes increasingly difficult. Maybe we want that, I don't know. I leave it up to the task force, but I don't want to force 20 people on this.
Bringer the amendment, is that a friendly? Yes. Yep, I would agree. Any more discussion on the proposed amendment? Everyone understanding it? Tanner, I will get you okay, we're good. Representative Connolly.
Well, I don't know if, I think this is on the amendment, but I'm thinking a task force, there's quite a few people on it, but where we're looking at paying some costs for the task force, the more people that are on it, the more it's gonna cost. And sometimes the more people you have, the harder it is to come to some kind of consensus to present something. Is it typical that task forces are up to 20 people? Is it?
Thank you,
'Cause
Representative
I've
Connolly,
not
for that
been
question.
Part of one.
Yeah, I share that concern. I think and certainly if this bill advances, we'd be very entertained to maybe amend that at a later date. I think Representative Provenza's addition to that language is super helpful, and there's some opt-in options from our former governors, and some might not opt in. So I do appreciate that concern, being fiscally conservative and worried about that, but I think we're good. But we are on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please vote aye. 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 Opposed, no. That amendment has been adopted. Page 2, any other amendments? Hopping over to page 3. Any amendments on page 3? Seeing none, we're gonna hop to page 4. Any amendments on page 4? And page 5, effective date. Okay, any more discussion on House Bill 106? Representative Connolly, right when you took a drink.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, my question is, was there any attempt to try to get a group of, it sounded like the bringer of the bill has talked to a lot of people about this, and I think it's a really good idea. But my question is, was there any kind of attempt to put a group together find some private funding sources that might help with this project, since it's like for the, our 250th celebration. Is there some grant funding out there that could go to this? Because I just think if we could do more on the private side as opposed to the state side, I would like that better.
Thank you for the question, Representative Connolly. Vice Chair Harshman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Connolly. And I think that would be the kind of one of the jobs of the task force, to kind of see what's out there in terms of funding. Is there private groups or folks that want to donate, those kind of things? That's above my, deal as an individual, but I think as a task force, I think that'd be a interesting look at that. Thank you.
Representative Wharf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm probably going to be a killjoy because I can tell you, I think it's a great idea. I think it's an exciting idea. I just question that we got the time to do it. I mean, by the time we even come up with the idea, we're going to be at the 250-year anniversary. So by the time we start to implement it, it's probably going to be 300 years after we were a country. So, and I just, right now, I mean, the other committee I serve on, we've been focusing so much of our time and attention on trying to cut government. I myself would have a hard time. I know the dollar amount's not a lot. I would be willing to bet that with a phone call, you could probably get a lot of our past governors, past speakers, past presidents to work on this without spending a dime, have them identify it. I just, that's why I'm going to vote against. I think it's a great idea. I just don't think it's the right time, and I don't think we got time to put it together and build it in time for the 250th anniversary. Sorry.
Thank you, Representative Wharf. I think you said time 4 times, and I don't know if you're referring to our time today in our meeting, but noted. I appreciate that grin ear to ear too. And I look down there, Representative Thayer, did you have a question? Or please, if you have one, if you don't, no big deal. Committee, any other questions? I mean, we could change the effective date or move up the date on line 4, Representative Wharf, to deal with your concerns. Representative Harshman.
Mr. Chairman, I think, and I appreciate Representative Wharf brings up a good point. So you think about 100 years ago when this bill was passed in 1925. For some of us, it doesn't seem that long ago. An actual, the monument in that case wasn't complete until 1939, and really still an ongoing piece. But so I don't think the goal is to try to have something done by that 250th anniversary on July 4th of 26, but just to kind of start that talk and moving in that direction for our state, developing that resource. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Harshman. Representative Jarvis.
So I'm going to speak for this, and $40,000 is relatively not that much. And the concept and the idea for the residual income, because I feel like this is very different than the conversation we had last night versus a project that we were funding and then turning over to someone else to benefit. And the income is going to our schools. And right now, looking at our current climate, we're moving some very stable funding sources to some very unstable funding sources in schools. And so I think this is a wonderful idea to get going.
Thank you, Representative Jarvis. Representative Thayer.
I am, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think how we market this, the message, this is an exciting time for our 250th, and this would be a great idea to get that temperature. And so, that is a form of economic development, which, as the good representative down the line talked about, that this would be a perfect opportunity to get the temperature at our 250th.
Appreciate those comments, Representative Thayer. Committee, sensing we're coming close to vote here, I mean, I really do agree with Representative Jarvis's comments. We are in an uncharted territory right now where the seas are rough and and the slopes are steep, and we don't know what's going to happen. And I think that part of our job on this committee is to really support this industry in Wyoming. And I think that this bill goes in that direction. And I think that I do really appreciate Representative Worf's comments. It's a discussion that we just can't seem to get away from upstairs. But I will be, as a co-sponsor of the bill and with these good changes, I will be supporting it. So Representative Storr.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just also remind the body that we're asking a lot from our Wyoming tourism employees, especially those that have not received a raise yet. And should there be an opportunity to reconsider that issue, though I think most of you guys were pretty good on that issue, except for maybe this one. So let's not ask them to do more without giving them the raise that they deserve. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Wow, we have a great committee. All right. Sensing urge to vote, this will be a roll call vote on House Bill 106, Monument to America.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for House Bill 106. Representative Campbell.
Aye.
Representative Connolly.
Aye.
Representative Harshman. Representative Jarvis.
Aye.
Representative Provenza.
Aye.
Representative Storer. Representative Thayer.
Aye.
Representative Worf.
No.
Chairman Byron.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, there are 8 aye, 1 no.
I'm going to go ahead and assign House Bill 106 to be carried on the floor by Representative Harshman and Representative Worf. Yep, two of you can tag team that one. I will stay for popcorn. All right, thank you, committee. Thank you, agency that spent the time. Come back and see us. Representative Harshman may have to sneak out for another bill, but we are on to our good friend Representative Davis. House Bill 110. And he made the mistake of promising it would be short, so buckle up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is pretty short. I bring to you House Bill 110, it's a trapping license, non-resident reciprocal licenses. It was pointed out to me by some local trappers that there was a loophole in there, and we believe that with the change of language there, and the addition, has everybody got the bill? On page 2, line 3, remove those from after if to line 7. Line 9, remove to line 10, including, and then insert the species applied for can be lawfully trapped in the state of residence. Line 13 through 17, up to his state, and then line 18, we'll remove some language there and have issues non-resident permits to Wyoming residents. Apparently there was just a little discretion on the interpretation of some of that language, and this is supposed to clean it up and make it good to go. And with that, I would look for an aye.
Thank you, Representative
Or nay.
Davis. Any other electeds in the room that may or may not want to speak to this? No? Oh, can't. My neighbor always needs a bite at the apple. As a co-sponsor, please come on up. Welcome to House TRW.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. I don't have much to add other than I'm in support of Representative Davis's bill here as a co-sponsor and would encourage an aye vote from you folks.
Thank you, Representative Schmidt. Thank you for frequently attending our meeting down here. Any other electeds in the room? Any questions of the bringer of the bill from my committee? Not seeing any. Let's go ahead if we are ready. Oh, Representative Storr, please, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just, the grammar queen in me is questioning having the word only twice in the sentence that's at the top of page 2 and why that was inserted.
Page 2, line 2.
So, yeah, the sentence that reads that with the amendment, the department shall only issue a trapping license to a non-resident only if.
And then,
Only if you, only,
and then if you, I think the remainder of that is stricken, you hop down to page 10.
right. No, only if the species applied for can be lawfully trapped.
Mr.
Representative
Chairman,
Davis.
on the copy I have, page 2, after shall,
I
up
think we
there
can
on
get
top,
rid of this one.
it would read, after fee, receive a license to trap any fur-bearing animal. The resident, the department shall only issue a trapping license to a non-resident only if, and that's if the species is applied for and can be lawfully trapped in his state of residence.
Representative Storr?
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, so the goal is here to create a requirement for reciprocity. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Okay. We can figure out the language. I think there might only need to be one only.
Only? Okay, thank you. Noted. Committee, any other questions, of Representative Davis? Thank you, Representative Davis. We will work on that. Should we have the opportunity, let's go ahead and hop over to our wonderful department if they have any comments on House Bill 110. Welcome. For the committee, please reintroduce yourselves, and those on Zoom, appreciate you being here.
Good afternoon, Chairman, committee members. My name is Dan Smith. I'm the Chief Game Warden for the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. I don't even know who I am. With me today, I have Matt Withroder, who's the Regional Wildlife Supervisor out of the Laramie region, and I'll lean on his expertise as we go through this. So thank you for the opportunity to comment on the bill this afternoon. As the sponsor said, this bill amends the statute authorizing non-residents to obtain Wyoming fur bear licenses only if the species can be applied for and lawfully trapped in the non-resident state, and the state would issue a non-resident trapping license to that species to a Wyoming resident. So as proposed, it does make some amendments to it. It took me a minute to wrap my head around it, but I think what it says is, in the old way it said, if they don't allow us to do it, we won't allow them to do it. And in the new way it says, if they allow us to do it, we'll allow them to do it. So the one exception that might be there is if the species is not available in their state, for example, pine marten, then we wouldn't be allowed to trap, they wouldn't be allowed to trap that in our state if we couldn't trap it there. Currently, non-residents apply for a trapping license. They furnish a notarized affidavit, including their legal address, their state of residence, and a copy of the state's current statutes. These provisions do not change in this amendment. That's how we do it now. That's how it would be under the new bill as well. I can go through the process of how a non-resident applies if you would like me to. A non-resident submits an application. Game and Fish staff review that and their supporting documentation to make sure that this reciprocity applies. Game warden assigns an approved application, and then if the species can't be lawfully trapped in Wyoming or in the non-resident state, then it can't be trapped here, and so we just limit them onto what they can trap here. That doesn't really change in the new way either. That process would be the same. Currently, the department issues about 35, on average, 35 non-resident trapping licenses a year. It's a fairly small number. If we wanted to automate that, as I just explained that process, they submit a paper application and there's a lot of approval there. If we wanted to automate that system, there would be a cost to the department, initial cost of about $14,600 one time. And then after that, the annual cost would be about $2,586 a year, which is what it is right now. So no real cost if we continue the way we're doing it. The proposed statute does not appear to change the license issuance process or the documentation that they're provided to, or that they're required to provide. And so I did have just some friendly amendments if you are interested in them. We also caught the double only, so I won't go into that one. On page 2, line 18. It says issues non-resident permits. We would recommend changing permits to trapping licenses. On line 19, after the word Wyoming residents, add for the same species. With that, I would stand for any questions you have.
Thank you, Chief Smith, for that explanation. From an enforcement standpoint, obviously, there is a big change in the statute in this proposed bill, but kind of as we wrap our head around it, it is simplifies it a bit, especially with that change. Do you see any issues from the wearing your chief hat? I mean, 35 non-resident trapping licenses per year is not as many as I would have thought, but if you have any comments on that, if you don't.
Chairman Byron, I don't see any change in how we do things. Again, it's a minor change, and so the enforcement on the ground would be basically the same.
Thank you for that. Committee, as we're working through this bill that has a lot of ink but doesn't make a huge change, any other questions? Representative Wharf, please.
I just have one, and I don't know if you can answer it or not, but I guess if we go down this path, do you anticipate any type of retaliation from other states? Or is the department concerned that this could spill over to other species that we may say, if they don't allow us, we don't allow them?
Chief Smith?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Wharf. So the one change that this does is in the old way, if they didn't allow us, we didn't allow them, it was more general. Under the new language, so if it's species specific, if we don't allow them to trap a species or take a species in our state, their reciprocity in their state may say, well, now if you're not gonna allow us to do that, we're not gonna allow you to do this. So it could kind of build on that. We'd have to see what happens there.
Appreciate that question, Representative Wharf. Committee, any other questions? Representative Storer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you have a preference on which only to keep?
Chief Smith, you only have a minute to answer this question.
Okay, so our strike was the first only.
Okay.
Only the first one, though.
Okay. I would agree.
Committee, any other questions of the department? Chief Biologist, are we good? Thank you. Further open it up to any other elected government folks. Anyone else in the room? We do have an online, and I hope that Mr. Arnell's able to hop in if he is on. Go ahead and let him in. Mr. Arnell, if you can hear me, go ahead and unmute your mic and turn your camera on if you can and introduce yourself.
Can you hear me now?
I got you, Mr. Arnell. Please introduce yourself. Welcome to House TRW.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Trent Arnell. I'm from Carbon County, Wyoming. I just wanted to speak out in support of this bill. As a member of the trapping community, I do know that there has been some confusion among non-resident trappers on the interpretation of the statute, and I believe that the wording that you have before you will kind of clean up that confusion and make this process a little easier, and I feel it'll be kind of setting a more level playing field for non-resident trappers applying for licenses while maintaining what I feel is the true intent of a species for species reciprocity criteria for non-resident license.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Arnell. Appreciate that. Committee, any questions? Mr. Arnell? Thank you, Mr. Arnell. We're going to go back. Any more public comment in the room? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Committee, what is your pleasure on House Bill 110? The bill has been moved by Representative Connolly. Do I have a second? Got to move it first. Yep, it's been moved by Representative Connolly, seconded by Representative Campbell. Committee, let's go ahead and work this bill. Any changes on page 1? Page 2, Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm gonna stop doing vampire voice like I was using upstairs. You're not speaker. Did I say speak? Oh. Mr. Presidente, I would like to remove only on line 2.
I second.
Do the rest of them. They're separate amendments.
Okay, moved by Representative Provenza, seconded by myself. Any discussion? I'm gonna try not to say the word. Any discussion, committee?
Question.
Question being called. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. That amendment carries. Representative Campbell.
So I would move that line 18, after the word issues non-resident, we strike permits and insert trapping licenses. And then on line 19, to Wyoming residents, insert for the same species. And I think joining the thoughts that start on 9 to 13, we need that and, I think. On line 11. So it would read, starting on line 10. Oh, I have to start on line 3. So non-resident only if, jumping down to 10, the species applied for can be lawfully trapped in his state of residence and their state issues non-residents trapping licenses to Wyoming residents for the same species.
Do I have a second? Seconded by Representative Thayer. I will agree with that. I just want to get a nod from the department on that and. Yep, okay. Any discussion? Representative Jarvis?
I just have a quick question and, sorry. Just thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll start out the right way. Was it at or the same species? Or was it just for the same species?
For the same species.
Was it for? Okay.
Any other discussions on this amendment?
I don't,
Question being called. All those in favor of the amendment, aye? Aye. Opposed, no. That amendment carries. Let's give Veloso a second to catch up. Fast. Okay, any other amendments on page 2, page 3? Question being called. This will be a roll call vote on House Bill 110.
Mr. Chairman, there's a roll call vote for House Bill 110. Representative Campbell.
Aye.
Representative Connolly.
Aye.
Representative Harshman.
He left an absentee.
What was the vote?
Aye.
Aye. Representative Jarvis.
Aye.
Representative Provenza.
Aye.
Representative Storer.
No.
Representative Thayer.
No.
Representative Wharf.
Aye.
Chairman Byron.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, there are 7 aye.
Wait, I'd like change to no.
Mr. Chairman, there are 6 aye, 3 no.
Thank you, Tanner. Okay. Representative Davis, you got that one on the floor? Okay, committee, I have taken the privilege of calling on one of my colleagues for our next bill because a lot of these bills were coming out of our interim committee and I felt like I was talking too much. So I'm very appreciative that Representative Thayer this morning, just a few hours ago, decided to learn a lot about House Bill 2 and is up to present it to us. This was a bill that came out of a couple different interim meetings, started in Cody, but I'm happy to help her out. Representative Thayer, please go through House Bill 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In front of you for your consideration is House Bill 2. This is a hunting license application fee increase sponsored by Joint Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, Cultural Resources Interim Committee. As you can see, it's a pretty straightforward bill. There are no changes. It's just an act relating to Game and Fish, authorizing the Game and Fish Commission to set application fees for hunting licenses as specified, removing minimum contribution requirements to property damages, compensation funds, requiring rulemaking and providing effective dates. So there are no changes on page 1. If we go to page 2, excuse me, line 5, just some striking, but really line 6, where it will be changed from $5 to established by rule and shall not exceed $20 for the resident applications, and then $75 for the non-residents. Again, striking through line 11. And then as you get to line 15, there's a lot of striking, and this really is just cleaning up old language that is not needed anymore. Also to let the committee know that the department has other statutes to direct us to pay damages, so that is still so that is still covered for our property and our landowners and our lessees. So on that, I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Representative Thayer. Great job. Appreciate that. Committee, I can also answer any question. Representative Thayer.
All right, Mr. Chairman, do you want me to talk about the couple amendments?
Well, I think we'll get there. Let's, committee, any questions? House Bill 2 from the interim committee? Okay, seeing none, I appreciate that. You can come back up. Go ahead and ask the department to come on up. And I think as they come up, committee, I'll just give you a little background from my lens. This was a continued discussion on funding and where we can find some funding for our wonderful Game and Fish Department. You know, we have the privilege to pursue these species and these fish and work and recreate and play on these lands. And I will tell you, as a chairman, I am continually concerned about the funding mechanism for them and just continuing, I think, as a TRW committee, looking at that year in, year out. So with that, department, please.
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon, representatives. Angie Bruce, Director, Wyoming Game and Fish. I don't think you've met Eric Wiltinger. He's my deputy director. He mostly focuses on internal relations, budgets, commissions, et cetera. And then to the left of me is Chief of Fiscal, Dirk Miller, who also oversees our licensing section. So definitely have some good expertise with me today. But thank you for the chairman to give just a little bit of background, and I won't go into depth, but I'll just touch on a few things. We did spend a great deal of time during the interim session talking about really our fiscal state of the department. And this is one bill that came from that discussion. And just real briefly, we gave a lot of presentations of where we stand, but really to ask, like, why are we in sort of a fiscal issue within the department that we're really looking at our revenue and our expenditures, both hands. And it's sort of the perfect storm. So you guys know COVID, inflation, we're paying more for everything. I won't dwell on that. But then also, you know, we are very grateful for the legislature over the last several years having the 3-tiered approach to having our employees have raises. Did a world of difference for morale and retention of valuable employees with the department, but that came with a cost as well, and a reoccurring cost with those increases. And then the decrease end, so less revenue coming in. You know, when we have effects like really bad winters and we issue less big game license, that does cut into the revenue that we generate. And then this year with the wildfires up at the Bighorns, we either gave refunds or carried over license of over 1,000, maybe a record or close to a record year for that. So again, less money coming in, more money coming out, and that gets at inequity. So what we're doing within the department is we're really looking at all aspects of what we currently spend funds on. Deputy Director Wiltinger is taking a close look at all of our expenditures. That's an ongoing process. A lot of, you know, small savings here and there, and then reshifting some priorities because we are at that point as well. But then we're also looking at where we can generate revenue. And, you know, the department, runs a very tight ship, but that it's set in state statute when we raise any license fees or applications fees, such as what this one does. So that's really what this bill is in front of you today. Like the representative there talked about, currently, when you go to apply for a draw for an application fee, a resident will pay $5 and a non-resident $15. So when I put in for my antelope tag, I pay $5. This bill would possibly increase it one day, maybe up to 20. But what it does is it gives the commission the ability to raise it. I do not believe they would take that jump and raise it all the way up to 20 at once. But there is that cap on it. Where did that $20 come from? Good question. If we would look at inflation costs over time, since those amounts were set, we get right up around that $20 of what it would be today. If I was a non-resident, it is currently $15 with that ability for the commission over time to raise it up to $75. What that does, a couple things to draw your attention to in the bill. During the last time in the interim committee meeting, there was an amendment put on this on page 2, line 10, that says, for all personal applications made at the same time. So currently, the application fees bring in around $3 million for the department. With that line added at the last meeting this was discussed at, this is actually now a revenue decrease bill. It would go from 3 million to 2 million, roughly, brought into the department. So we do have an amendment that was handed out to you asking to delete that last addition to put it back at that neutral. So we would be starting out where we are now with the 3 million, then giving the commission the ability to raise it to increase revenue when the time is right. And with that, I think I'll pause and stand for any questions.
Thank you, Director. Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to make sure this is solid in my head, with the deletion of the line applications for all personal applications made at the same time, I understand, I think, the damage that's going to do, because if there were 5 of us applying at the same time, it would be that $5 times 5, right? So what that line does is says now those 5 people will just be charged 1 application fee.
Yeah,
Which is where the
Mr.
challenge comes in. I don't know if I'm reading that right.
Director.
And that's why it's not a good thing.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative, you almost had it quite right. It's if I would apply, so not multiple people, but if I put in 5 different asks at once, currently, I would be charged 5 times. And then what this bill currently does is combine that to 1, therefore decreasing the revenue.
And if I may, reflecting back on interim committee discussions, and Representative Story hop in here, but I can tell you as someone that applies for a lot of these, and am absolutely fine with paying per license. These are very large transactions, because I may, once the applications open up, I do try to just remember, so I don't forget, to apply for every species I'm eligible for this year, times that 5. So if I apply for, like you said, 10 different licenses, there would be a $50 fee. But the conversation was also had, the up to was discussed a lot in the interim, leaving that, much like this recent snowmobile discussion, leaving them some leeway as they see fit, and maybe not having to come back to the body every year and tweak it. And then it did at the very last meeting, I believe, the good former representative out of your country amended it to cause this issue, and I think he did it with intent to do it that way, and I respect his take on that, but I do think it got a little murky at the end of that day, and the result was that it was actually a revenue decrease bill. And as a sportsman, and I would open it up to questions, I think that it's really important to continue to recognize, and we keep hearing, I just read another email, we're feeing people to death, and I think we could consider that, but once again, this is a privilege, and we are supporting an industry, and especially a department that is doing their best job they can with their resources to manage these wildlife. And although it comes with issues, it is a fee I was fine with paying. Wouldn't you agree? Representative Thayer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. When was the last time the fees were raised?
Director?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, I might turn it over to the Chief of Fiscal for that, but I do know that across-the-board hunting fees have not been done since the 80s. We have had different fees increased, primarily on the non-resident over time. Just a few years ago, there was a bill that put it on the special draw for a big game, and that brought in some additional revenue. Maybe 4 years ago, you're testing my memory here, but the conservation stamp had a $9 increase for the specific purpose of access agreements and for wildlife crossings. So there's been a variety, specifically for this application fee. Chief Miller, can I lean on you?
Chief Miller, please.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Thayer, application fees started in 2006. The fee was $4 for residents and $12 for non-residents. In 2008, that went up to $5 for residents and $14 for non-residents. And then in 2018, non-residents went to $15. So there have been a few changes over time, but been pretty static.
Appreciate that. Representative Thayer, good question. Committee, any other questions of the department? Ooh, Representative Storr, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Miller, for being here. I'm, now that the fiscal note is starting to make some sense. So just to help me out with both the math and my understanding. So last year, you had 59,000 residents who purchased hunting licenses, is the way the fiscal note reads. I'm curious if you know how many licenses they applied for. So, because that's the number, right, that this fee would apply to. That's what we're discussing. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Storr, so I can tell you that of those 59,000, there were 29% of them only applied for one license.
Okay.
And so 71% of them applied for more than one. And I don't have that other number. So you're curious. Yeah, I don't have that. Maybe that answered your question.
Well, I was just trying to think through the math of, sorry, Mr. Chairman, of if you have a reduction of 527,000 from residents, that would seem to indicate that a lot of people are applying for a fairly big number of licenses.
Mr. Miller.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Storr, yeah, so among the residents, there are, 71% of them apply for more. 15% of the people apply for 5 or more. So, and then on non-residents, conversely, 71% of them apply for 1 license. And that was of the applicants in 2024.
Great data. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Representative Orff.
So just one last follow-up.
Yeah, one please, Representative Storr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Miller, can you tell us with the change proposed to take out the provision that applications made at the same time would only pay the one fee, what would be the fiscal note on this bill?
Mr. Miller, we may need to get that.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Storr, so if right now this bill doesn't change the fee, it simply gives the commission authority to change it up to a limit. And so with no change, that this amendment would then provide them the opportunity, and we would anticipate with the same number of applications that the revenue would be flat without a change in the fee, if that answers that question.
Director Bruce, please.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I can maybe say it a different way. With the current amendment in there, so as written with one application fee and no increase, that the commission would do no increase, so status quo, it's about $1 million loss to the department. We currently bring in about 3 million. It would cut it back 1 million. Does that help? Okay.
Thank you, Director Bruce. Yeah, know a lot of data. Representative Wharf, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I have a question and I guess a couple questions. The first is, you know, that's a pretty big jump in application fees. You know, the people that are putting for the licenses are doing all the work. What is the justification? I mean, I'm still putting all the information in. You know, nothing's changing, but it's a pretty substantial increase from what we did in the past. And that's the question. I remember we used to do it all in handwritten ink, and I understood the application fee because I had to send that in and somebody had to process my application. My application is now submitted electronically, and I guess I'm struggling, Mr. Chairman, to understand why this is the avenue we're going.
Thank you, Representative Wharf. Director Bruce.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, very, very good question. Application fee is a way of generating funds to manage wildlife in this state. It's a way we do it. Some other states may have just a hunting license required with every application. Some states that hunting license might be as much as $150. So it's a different way of saying this is a requirement to contribute. As you said, some of that is paid for actually the processing of it, but it also goes to a lot of other things as well. So it's a way of generating income from those potential interests, both internal in the state and non-resident.
Representative Wharf.
And a follow-up, and I appreciate you saying that, but I guess that's one of the problems I have is it's no longer an application fee. It's now a revenue generating source for the department. And I think that's important for everybody to understand that. The other problem that I have, and this goes back to history, and I know when I was on the other side of the aisle and representing sportsmen, we authorized the department to change the application fee for preference points. And one of the concerns that I had was we gave the department this sliding scale opportunity. And I can tell you, I was very disappointed because immediately, and I mean immediately, the commission went from 0 to max. And I can tell you, it kind of, to me, a lot of people said, see, they can't trust them. And I guess that's what it comes back to me. I want to work with the department. I don't want to be poking you guys in the eyes or the nose, but I guess I want to have some kind of assurances that, because to go from $5 applying as a resident to $20 per thing, per species, I know most of the guys I know apply for everything. They apply for everything they can. And so it's not lost on me. It's not just the potential of a $15 increase. If you're applying for multiple species, just for simple numbers, 5, you're going from $25 in application fees now to $100. And this was the concern and the issue that we had when we talked about license fee increases last time. It's the cumulative impact of all these little increases, how they affect. I had people telling us that when you look at the total, the whole family, it's not just the increase, now it's the total cost of licenses, everything else. We saw people now starting to say we're spending so much money on hunting licenses. You know, it was, we could go to Florida, we could go to Cancun, we could go to all these other places. And that was our concern with as you start to increase all these things, there's other things that now we're competing with. And so I guess that's my concern is we increase this. I'm concerned, I want to have some assurances that we're not going to go from 0 to 50. Well, we're not, and so I guess that's my question, Director Bruce and other members. Dirk, it's good to see you. I just don't know if you can answer that, please.
Director Bruce, or where the question is.
Mr. Chairman, if you're okay, Representative, I'll just do a response instead of maybe an answer. I do hear you. I do understand that history component that you're talking about in that situation, so I appreciate that. And I think his sentiment and his comments are warranted. And I would say that our recommendation to our commission is not going to go from 5 to 20. I'm going to speak for a resident, because that's what I am, and I can process through how I operate. And, you know, I think if we recommend smaller increments, you know, let's go up $5, that'll give us the boost we need. We have no intention of recommending up to 20 right away. With that said, it is a commission decision and not a Game and Fish one. We can just recommend. I do know personally, if my application fee goes up from 5 to 10, I probably won't even notice. I'm not even sure I can remember what I pay, you know, as a total package each year. But if we did jump it to 20, that is more noticeable. And like you said, with multiples, it does add up. So we would definitely want to proceed with caution.
Thank you,
And
Director
thank you.
Bruce.
That's what I was looking for, is I would like to see, and I know that you guys have to follow the directive of the commission, but I would certainly hope that the message is delivered to the commission pretty loud and clear that I'm afraid if they make a jump like that, would be obligated to try to take it back. And I don't want to do that, so thank you.
Thank you, Representative Worf. Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So 2 points. One was to clarify that it truly was the giving them that leniency, but not to exceed $20, I think was the important part. So they have the flexibility, but we're not going to jump. And you already confirmed that. So the second clarifier, I guess, I would have, just to make sure I'm processing this accurately. I tend to view this the same as our snowmobile conversation. It is that here's a fee, right, to participate in and have access to. So in order to continue to manage and provide this experience, we need funds for, and it costs more to manage and provide this experience. So, you know, it's that pay-to-play kind of concept that we were talking about with snowmobiles and trails. So this fee increase that really hasn't been increased since 2008 is the fee that we are willing to pay as sportsmen to play, is kind of how I'm equating it, and that may be oversimplifying, so.
Director Bruce.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, absolutely. And if I could just circle a little bit back to Representative Worf's issue, because it dawned on me, been through not my first rodeo on increases with hunting or fishing license of any kind throughout my career. This is a reoccurring thing. And I will have to say that the research does show that in most states that have any sort of increase, there can be a dip in who wants to play, right? So there could be a decrease because that willingness to pay is always an issue. We've seen that some in Wyoming and some not, because our demand is so high. It doesn't affect us that much. So it would be responsible not to have that increase immediately, because we'd turn around and see an immediate loss. We have to be careful so that we don't lose those and have, especially maybe non-residents who want to go elsewhere, more particular residents. We do not want to lose resident hunters. So we want to balance that. Pay to play, there's a threshold about what people are willing to pay. So we're very cautious of that.
Thank you, Director. And Committee, as we continue this discussion, please make sure, as I clarified earlier, we are asking questions of the department. If we choose to move the bill, we can certainly have discussions, but the intent of the process is to ask questions of the good folks, and certainly some leeway for comments, but I would like to keep it to questions. And there probably are other folks in the room, I believe there are some online, that would like to comment on this. So any other questions, Committee, of the department? Thank you. 3. Anyone else in the room on House Bill 2? Please. Familiar face, not only back on the west side of the state, but right where Representative Worf and Schmidt and I sit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Committee. I understand this bill. I understand the revenue issue the department is facing. For me personally, I'd take advantage of this because my kids are raised, they're gone. My wife doesn't hunt, it's just me. So I would apply for every license I could one time and get a one-time application fee. But my concern is, and why I would speak against the bill, is not for me, but for the common, everyday person. The beauty of the Wyoming Game and Fish Department is we've got long application seasons. I mean, moose and sheep are like a 4-month application season. Deer, elk, and pronghorn are a 5-month application season. And it gives a family the ability to spread those costs out. They don't have the money to do it like I do. They got to spread those costs out, and when you start adding wives or spouses and children into the mix, it becomes very expensive for them to do that. So they're just not able to take advantage of the beauty of this bill. It's going to hurt those folks, in my opinion, with having to make multiple applications over a period of time. So that's the point I'd like to make. I'd like you to take that into consideration, and that's why I would speak against the bill.
Thank you, Representative Schmidt. Appreciate that. Any questions of the good representative? Appreciate the comments. Okay, anyone else in the room, please introduce yourself. Welcome back to House TRW.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jess Johnson, Wyoming Wildlife Federation. We stand in support of this bill with the recommended amendment. And that is very contingent. We don't want to see a net negative happen. I think the intent of this bill, we were at the interim committee meetings, is to generate a little bit of revenue. And I think I want to remind you the discussion that we had on Tuesday around lions and how focused we were on mule deer and how worried we are about mule deer in this state. If we want to keep doing programs that is mule deer management, that is habitat restoration, that is working on aquatic invasive species, the zebra mussels, that is our large carnivore program that is helping monitor bears, lions, everything else like that. If we want those programs to keep happening and keep benefiting our wildlife, inflation happens. Charges for how, you go do a habitat project, it costs different today than it did 20 years ago. We do have to flex with the inflation, and we have to give the department the ability to do that. And I agree, I don't think the commission is going to go out and just go, yep, $20 right out of the gate. I'm going to speak from my perspective. I carry 9 big game tags in my pocket every year. 3 deer, 3 antelope, and 3 elk. I get a male of a species and 2 female of the species. That comes to right around $314. And I budget for it. I also am a person that cannot afford that right out of the gate. I spread it out. But I am so happy to be able to go out into my backyard, shoot an elk, shoot an antelope, shoot a deer every single year. And if what that needs to happen is that we flex a little bit and we pay a little bit more on an application fee, man, I'm so happy to do that. And I am not the only person. I'm sitting here representing Wyoming Wildlife Federation. That's 4,000 of members that are in this state that are going to be saying, yeah, like we do understand that has to happen. People are going to chafe at it a little bit. But I think if we want to have the Wyoming that we have today and we want it 50 years from now, we're going to have to learn to lean in a little bit and figure out how we can afford the things to stay what Wyoming is, and it's iconic.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Committee, any questions of Ms. Johnson? Appreciate that.
Chairman, members of the committee, Josh Metten, Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership. Don't really have a whole lot to add. Jess did a great job of articulating that. Just echo what she said about the bill with the amendment. I guess the one thing I would say is sports people have a long tradition of having skin in the game and putting money into the things that we care about. And as someone who has had the opportunity to hunt in other states, we have it so good here. And so I would encourage you a yes vote on this.
Appreciate that, committee. Any questions? Anyone else in the room for public testimony on House Bill 2. We do have one online. Tanner, if you could go ahead and let Ms. King in. They're still on. Awesome. Welcome to House TRW.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Sabrina King, and I am representing the Wyoming chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. I appreciate my colleagues in the sporting world. I won't repeat what they said, but I do want to provide a little bit of an alternative perspective. And I will say our members have not taken a position for or against this bill. But I wanted to raise some concerns, to be very honest. And those concerns don't come from not wanting to fund game and fish, or from our members not being willing to have skin in the game. I think anyone who hunts in the state of Wyoming has a lot of skin in the game at this point. We brought this up over the summer, and one of the issues that we have with this bill, and I think with this conversation in general, is that if game and fish is in a position where revenues are an issue, our members had a lot of concern that over the summer, the commission passed a pretty expansive, a pretty large expansion to our landowner damages payment program. That expansion, in our opinion, sort of went above and beyond what potentially we can even afford as a state, frankly, and could cost the department to the tune of $2 to $10 million a year. We don't really know yet. Our members had a lot of concern, opposed that increase, as did the overwhelming number of people who commented to the commission. And the commission ignored all of those comments completely. Even those who said we could potentially support this increase if we can also have the conversation about increasing access, particularly in those areas where we have, for example, elk herds that are over objective. That conversation has never happened. So we are here now, 6 months later, having a conversation about asking sportsmen once again to pay more, to have more skin in the game. And I just want to relate to the committee that there is a frustration among a number of folks in the sporting community about, the notion that, particularly when it comes to certain things like the damages program, that we can just go back to sportsmen and women time and time and time again and ask for more and more money. And I would just point out that if you look at the past 6 to 7 years, every single year, there's at least one bill that is discussed and usually passes that increases the fees on the sporting community. And we do that, and generally speaking, support those bills because we do have skin in the game, because this is a lifestyle for us. This is who we are. And at a certain point, when we're watching, 15, 20, however many bills that will decrease, for example, our property taxes, and the sporting community is the only constituent group that consistently pays more every year. And then we see the commission going forward and saying, well, let's just take our damages program and triple, quadruple the cost of that, and sportsmen can just pay for it with a fee increase. That will be fine. It starts to get concerning. So I think, regardless of what happens with this bill, I will say we also have some concerns about leaving it to the discretion of the commission at this point. If that landowner damages program does explode, our fees will increase to $20. It just will. And I think we need to acknowledge that. So I think there is room to potentially have a discussion over the interim about capping the landowner damages payment program. I think that's a conversation that we should have as a legislature, and we will be talking with many of you about that over the next month. But I just wanted to provide sort of an alternative perspective and to say that our members are as in as anyone else in supporting the game and fish and making sure that the programs that need to be funded to support our wildlife are funded. But we have some concerns about what has happened over the course of the past year and where this money will be directed to, and the implications of that for us and our access and our ability to continue hunting in the state of Wyoming. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. King. Committee, any questions? Appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Committee, what is your pleasure on House Bill 2? It's been moved by Representative Storr. Do I have a second? Second by Representative Provenza. Okay, let's go ahead and work the bill. It's only a 3-pager. Committee, page 1, any changes? 2, any changes? Representative Storr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move the amendment brought to Game and Fish to delete the phrase "for all personal applications made at the same time" on lines 10 and 11.
Seconded, moved by Representative Torres, seconded by Representative Campbell. Any discussions on that amendment? Seeing none. Representative Worf, please.
That was put in.
The very end of interim, yep, on about our third meeting, and I think the intent there, if I may have a little liberty here, was a great former representative, and it did go to the heart of the discussion that you made, which was, if I apply for my, Ms. Johnson's point 9, that representative was of the opinion he should pay one application fee. And then we did have further discussion. Sometimes I forget, or I haven't decided what area I'm gonna put in for, so I do spread it out. But I think, I hate to speak for him, but I think that was the intent of his amendment, and this does take it back to kind of the original bill. Thank you for that question. Any other questions on that amendment? Sensing your urge to vote on that amendment, all those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed, no. Amendment carries. It's getting late. Okay, any other amendments on page 2? Representative Thayer.
Mr. Chairman, do we need to on line 7, but not to exceed? Because as everybody's talking, everybody's saying not to exceed, and as I'm reading it, it just, it's little, but just for clarity.
I don't think we need that. I do appreciate the thought. Any other amendments? Representative Jarvis.
Thank you, Chairman. After listening to this and listening to Game and Fish say that they can make a recommendation to the commission, and listening to, can I use names in committee? Representative Worf's concerns, and also the community. I'd like to recommend that we change the $20 to $10, because that's doubling from what it is. And that we change the $75 to $50. Because then if we're going to release that agency, it's kind of meeting halfway to see how the commission does. I'm not comfortable asking my residents who are avid hunters to increase the costs, or even taking the chance of increasing the cost by 200, it's almost 200%. That's rough. Am I comfortable doing it with non-residents? Yeah, because I think you give the commission the opportunity. I think when non-residents come in, they come in to spend money and to have fun and for the experience, and I think they're willing. And I think this also gives them the opportunity that there's leeway in the non-resident. And when you look at the amount of non-residents versus residents that are hunting, that's my rationale.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second on that? Seconded by
I'll
Representative Worf.
second it, and if I can piggyback on it.
Can I, Representative,
Yeah,
let me
go ahead.
interrupt you. Thank you for this privilege, if I may. Representative Lean has a bill up in a few bills, and her and I had the privilege of discussing it earlier. We have 10 minutes before we're supposed to be back upstairs, so I don't want to hold her. I appreciate her, and I'm happy to work this with you and take the interim, or at least suggest it, so you and I can get together on that. Thank you for sitting in today, and thank you for your patience. Sorry, Representative Worf, please.
That's okay, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to add, one of the things that I think the committee needs to understand, one reason why I think it's not as big a deal to charge the non-residents a higher fee is, number one, if you look at how they apply, the Chief Fiscal Officer Dirk mentioned that they're typically only applying for one species, so it's not as big a deal. It is the multiplier effect, and that's why I think we got to be cognizant of what we do for the resident hunters, because it is multiplied. The non-residents, it's not as big a deal, and that's why I'm fine with increasing theirs a little bit more. But I just want the committee to understand that. That's what's important, not to be lost.
Thank you, Representative Worf. On the amendment, Representative Thayer.
Yeah, I guess I have a question is, on our states around us, what kind of, I'd like, make sure we're checking on the fees for non-resident.
And I can, Representative Thayer, that was discussed during the interim. I wish I could remember some of those discussions. Generally when we're all staying pretty, within a few percentage either way. I don't know if the department has that right off the top of your head. You're more than welcome, Director, to send somebody up. And then Representative Provenza, you might have right in front of you. Sometimes you got that. Please.
Sometimes I got that. I don't right now, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to recall testimony from the agency earlier that had a recommendation of how much you should increase fees at a time. I know they gave us a number. I can't remember that. But that might be good information to have. And it might have been in my other committee, Mr. Chairman. They don't let you sleep here in this, when you work as a legislator, so my brain's not working very well, to be honest with you.
Thank you, Representative Provenza. On the amendment, Representative Storr, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on and against the amendment, and the reason is not because of the concerns I think we heard from our hunters and angling folks, as well as members of the committee, but if this hasn't gone up since 2008, taking it to that number barely, I think, will keep up with inflation. And again, I think we've heard that it's unlikely that the department's going to take it all the way there. And the department only, it's under duress that the department comes and asks comes into the legislature. I think we've witnessed that over the decades. And just as a disincentive to the legislature to micromanage the Game and Fish Commission, I think this gives them enough latitude that they won't have to come back for some time. And we can trust them to come up with something reasonable.
Thank you, Representative Storr. On the amendment, Representative Connolly, it is 2:53, and I do intend to get to the next bill, and I would love to hear your comments, so
I will
please.
make it brief.
Please.
I'm in favor of this motion. I'm concerned that I know folks in my district that like to hunt, and I don't want to get to the place where the average, everyday person can't afford to pay their fees and buy a hunting license so they can find something to feed their family, and so I'm in favor of the motion.
Appreciate that. Any other comments, or do we want to call for the question on this motion?
Can I just say one more?
Representative Jarvis, please.
Yeah, one more thing, because when I'm hearing people say that they budget for $300, and if there's any potential at all for that doubling to budget for $600 now per person, I'm not comfortable going any higher than that.
Okay,
So with that, I call.
Call for the question, and this is going to be on page 2, line 7, 20 to 10, page 2, line 8, 75 to 50. All those in favor of Representative Jarvis's amendment, aye? Aye. Opposed, no?
No.
Let's do a raise of hand. All those in favor of Representative Jarvis's amendment to go on page 2, line 7, 10, and 8, line 50, please raise your hand. Raise your hand, keep it nice and high. 5, those opposed, raise your hand. 5 to 4, that amendment carries. Okay, any other amendments? We did another Game and Fish amendment. No, we're good on that? Okay, perfect. Okay, any other discussion on the bill? I want to keep mine brief. I've gone back and forth. We ran this through the interim. I am going to surprise some of you and be a no vote on this because I've talked to my counterpart down the hallway, I would like to come in with a specific number and just give a little more thought into this. I think that's where Representative Jarvis was getting, and I really do appreciate it. But I think at this point in the legislative session and where we're sitting, I just think that this bill, it's got a lot of ink on it now. It came with a lot of ink that we can use this as a foundation and move it forward. Just my 2 cents. Committee, any other comments on the bill? Representative Jarvis.
Just, I guess, I'm split in between that because I think this is a good opportunity to allow where we're not continuously coming back to re-legislate. And it's an opportunity to see if we can develop a trusting relationship to be able to do these types of things in the future. So we're not getting accused of continuously raising costs on people. If it is possible to see if the commission can handle that management and not have to come back and ask for it. But I also caution that those stories that we heard from immediately, please don't do us wrong, like right out of the gates, because then that just ensures that Representative Byron's not wrong in what he asked.
Thank you, Representative Jarvis. Any other comments? Sensing your urge to vote. Question being called on House Bill 2. Roll call vote.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for House Bill 2. Representative Campbell.
Aye.
Representative Connolly.
Aye.
Representative Harshman.
Aye.
Representative Jarvis.
Aye.
Representative Provenzo.
Aye.
Representative Stover.
Aye.
Representative Thayer. Representative Wharf.
Aye.
Chairman Byron.
Gotta stick to my word, no.
Chairman-
Representative Thayer, you did such a good job. You can floor manage this one. Thank you. Okay, Co-Chair Harshman, it is 2:58. We're not on Cal, we are on second reading. I am gonna. Committee, if you have a amendment coming up upstairs, or you have something going on, we have House Bill 148, 200, and 205 coming up. Please feel free to run upstairs, leave an absentee vote. We are only going to be hearing House Bill 107. So if anyone else is here to talk to other bills, but we will not be getting to House Bill 95 or the other bill. Representative Harshman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for scheduling this bill. Okay, this is really our work on the Capital Finance Committee. Representative Stover's on that committee. Myself, I've been on for 20 years. And then I think of our good treasurer and our chief investment officer's ideas here. It's been a learning experience, and I appreciate what the good treasurer's done and his advocacy for this. The whole idea really is to increase revenues by taking advantage of the compounding effect of money and of a long-term investment strategy. And other sovereign wealth funds around the world are doing this. And it's really incredible. And so House Bill 107 then, our work in CapFin, and we do have the next bill, if I get this done in the next 30 seconds. The next bill actually is a school generational account to use the 100 million off the recent sale of school trust land. That's what that bill is about, set that to use that 100 million. And you've heard some electeds say, no, we want to use that to buy oil and gas lands or those kind of things. So that's the issue with that. Okay, this bill's pretty clean though. It's a general fund you could add, and I'll just take you through the bill. And I actually did hand out what I'm going to be proposed amendments, I hope, and working with the treasurer's office. And it's the same bill, Mr. Chairman. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll just take you through the bill. There's created the generational investment account on page 2. The state treasurer, paragraph B, will invest these. He follows those laws, and it talks about the private equity and 15% at the bottom of that page. Flipping over to page 3. Vested for highest possible risk-adjusted total net rate. And those are pretty standard language in our investment statutes. Okay, and then on page 3, letter C, paragraph C, transfer 100 million a year from the LSRA. And the idea is to transfer 100 million each year, or an amount that we might select. We might amend that amount down as the committee works this. And then from the stabilization reserve into this generational account, and there it will grow each year and keep growing. So the transfers you can see on paragraph D, and the handout I gave you has a new paragraph D that is shorter, more concise from the treasurer. And Mr. Chairman, we can go over that in a minute, but you can see over to page 4, then there's paragraph E that has more, talks about after 14 years or thereabout, when the investment matures, it would be deposited back into the general fund. Now, there's a new paragraph E that the treasurer, and I agree with it, I think it shortens the bill and cleans it up over onto page 5. The last part of the bill on page F talks about the report each year. Treasurer would also like to amend some of that report language. And then finally, and that's really the bill, Mr. Chairman, and I guess if you would, I just distributed this copy with proposed amendments. Okay, and it looks exactly the same. And if you would flip that over, members, and flip over really to the second to the last page, and you can see those amendments. It says House Bill 107 amendments. And I'll just wait, so it looks like this. Everybody see that, the second to the last page? Okay. So those are the amendments from the good treasurer. And you can see it's on page 3 and page 4. So if you go to page 3 of this copy I've given you, you can see where on page 3 it deletes the current paragraph D and inserts his language, which is right here, much shorter. The draft language was 3/4 of a page. You can see that the amendment D is all appropriations and other monies directed to the Wyoming Generational Investment Account be credited to the account by the state treasurer. Earnings from the investment monies accounts will be retained in the account, should not be expended less than 22 years after the first date the monies are created in the account. So it changes that 14-year piece. And really what that is, 7 years and 2 months to double at this high rate of return around 10%. And sovereign wealth funds, and we are generating that as well. And then, so 7.2, 7.2, 7.2, 21.6 rounded up to 22 years. So that's why the 22 years. And then, Mr. Chairman and members, you can, I'm looking at the amendment, second to the last page for the new E, no earnings from the Wyoming Generational Investment Account shall be expended except upon legislative appropriation. The state treasurer may liquidate or sell investments in order to maximize earnings, minimize costs associated with making expenditures on that required. So the idea would be, my idea first was 100 million, 14 years, it'll be 400 million. And that'd be a nice little deposit in the general fund for, you know, the 76th, 77th legislature. They go, thank you, 68th. And the treasurer's idea is, actually, let's wait another 7 years. And if it was 100 million, then it would be 800 million. Now, 100 million is a pretty tough pull out of that. And so I'm gonna suggest you, maybe we drop that to 50 million and keep the 22 years. And then, Mr. Chairman and members, the very last page of the handout is important because what this does is guarantee, it guarantees the LSRA and the spending policy. I'm gonna let that pause and sink in a little bit, because think about our 5% spending policy. 2.5% of that 5%, half of it goes to the general fund. And then 1/4 of that 5%, 1.25, goes to the strategic investment project account. 2.5 and 1. That 3/4 of the spending policy is guaranteed by the reserve account. So if we don't make 3.75% returns, we have a bad year and lose 4%, that money's still gonna flow from the reserve account for those. What this amendment does is guarantee the LSRA distribution as well.
I just want to update our committee and you, Representative Harshman, we are through another bill up there on third reading. We did just miss a roll call vote, so we're not.
I thought we were in
no,
general file.
Yep, so we need to, yeah, we just missed the Wyoming Board of Governance elected trustees. It's amendments, that's why. So continue on and, or we can.
Okay, so that's it. And so this amendment would guarantee the LSRA, and I would propose an amendment to make it 50 million from the LSRA, not 100 million.
Okay.
So when you work the bill.
Questions, committee?
Page 3, yeah. Yeah.
Committee, any questions? Okay, Representative Provenza, please.
My recommendation is if we want this bill to go anywhere, we should allow public comment. We should then motion and bring committee of the whole amendments.
I am comfortable with that. With that, Representative Harshman, thank you for explanation. Public comments? I'm going to go ahead and open public comment. Patrick, we do have one in the room here, and then we'll get to you, Mr. Fleming. And like I said, you know, my sense is that we'll get this through, and then we need to get upstairs. So please introduce yourself. Welcome to House TRW.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't get to visit with you very often. My name's Don Williams. I'm the Deputy State Treasurer. The Treasurer is on his way, but he would want me to tell you that he supports this bill with the amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Mr. Fleming, great to see you. Welcome to House TRW.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Patrick Fleming, CEO of the Treasurer's Office. Yes, I'll make it really quick. This is a really important bill to be able to make up a shortfall of what we're going to have, because we are not going to have the income from the mineral resources that we've had before. And what happens is our generational funds, we do not have the income to support the expenditure that we have right now in inflation. And so we are doing a disservice to our kids and our grandkids by not having additional income to support the future generations. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Fleming, thank you so much for being on all afternoon and sharing that with us. With that, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Committee, what is your pleasure?
Move the bill. Move it.
House Bill 107 has been moved. This will be a roll call vote. Question being called.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for House Bill 107. Representative Campbell.
Aye.
Representative Connolly.
Aye.
Representative Harshman. Representative Jarvis.
She left an aye.
Representative Provenza.
Aye. Aye.
Representative Storer. Representative Thayer. Representative Wharf. Chairman Byron.
Aye.
Chairman, there are 9 ayes.
With that, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you.